Hey, Seb. There's a notepad on the table. Would you mind grabbing it? Thank you. I got it. It's okay. Thanks. Well, Don, this was a night that President Zelensky predicted would be very difficult. As you noted, he said that the fate of Ukraine is being decided right now. And over the course of the evening, we have seen all kinds of gunfire and explosions coming from all different directions. Just in the past few moments, as you and I were on the air, we did hear significant, heavy, sustained gunfire coming from the south of the city. I could see it going up into the air. You saw red tracer rounds. This was some kind of heavy machine gun. Don, we have also tonight seen the closest explosions yet to the city center, within the city limits. That is coming from the western part of the city, near, we understand, a military base. For now, it does appear that the Russians are targeting Ukrainian military targets, military installations. Of course, that could change very quickly the longer that this drags on. We have also been told that there is significant fighting in the eastern part, just to the east of the city, and all of this following what has been an invasion by Russian forces from the north, from Belarus. So all that to say that you have Russian forces coming at this city from every different direction. We know that their plan is to encircle the city. We understand that their plan is to try to take out this government. And we know from this gunfire and from these explosions that they are getting closer and closer. Don?
Ever got to a place where all...
It's especially unbelievable, Don, because this is such a radical change. We have talked so often about the remarkable calm that Ukrainians maintained in the lead up to this invasion, and now, as you can see right there, this has changed dramatically. The Ukrainians trying to get out. There were those special evacuation trains that left on Friday, trying to get some 10,000 people out of the city. People are heading to the west, towards Poland. There are fears. The Biden administration has predicted that there could be hundreds of thousands, if not more, refugees, really resulting in a refugee crisis. Don, in talking to people in the lead up to this invasion, what many of them would tell you is that they are ready to stand and fight. Not just soldiers who are on the front line in the east who have been fighting for the past 8 years, but men and women, normal men and women who are ready to take up arms. We saw President Zelensky the other night calling up reservists and then calling a general mobilization, now saying that anybody who wants a weapon can have a weapon. So this really is going to be a moment of truth to see to what extent not just the military, but normal civilians take this fight to the Ukrainians. And there have been some predictions that there could be a significant insurgency against Russian forces the longer that this drags out. This is not going to be like in 2014, and I was there when Russia took Crimea without firing a shot. This is going to be bloody. In the words of the top U.S. general, this is going to be horrific. So we do expect to see significant fighting, significant resistance, not just from the Ukrainian military, but from the Ukrainian population as well. Don.
But you cannot veto our voices. You cannot veto the truth. You cannot veto our principles. You cannot veto the Ukrainian people. You cannot veto the UN Charter. And you will not veto accountability.
You can stop the vote in this chamber, but what may stop the war is unfortunately the bodies and thousands of bodies of Russian soldiers that will be delivered to their mothers in Russia. Whether you like it or not, because we have to defend our territory, we have to defend ourselves on our territory.
Well, I spoke to France 24, New York correspondent Jessica Lamazzuria, just as the emergency meeting wrapped up.
Well, no one ever expected Russia to condemn itself by voting in favor of this resolution. A veto was always expected, but there were some questions about how China would vote, if it might go as far as a veto or if it would abstain. It ended up abstaining, but that is still not supporting the resolution, and China made it clear that it understands Russia's security concerns and its grievances. So really a sign that Russia is not entirely isolated on the world stage. The US has gone to great pains to try to drive a wedge between Russia and China.
Yo, Sergeant
That
Jim,
it has
what's
not,
up, bro?
Succeeded, and that was evident in the Security Council during this meeting. There were 3 abstentions in total: China, United Arab Emirates, and India. And the UAE ambassador explained the reason for that abstention, saying that they wanted to leave the path of dialogue open. And so not sort of a full-out condemnation of Russia in the council, but nevertheless the United States did try to portray Russia as isolated, and there was a lot of support for this resolution, it has to be said.
Andrew, it's kind of interesting. You know, it's the heart of war. All right, when the images of the battle, of people wounded, people fleeing, when those start.
Oh, it's going, bro. We're just watching the war. Hanging out with my AR-15 on my side here. You know how it is. Waiting for World War III to pop off. It's slowly making it.
And I think what's happening in European capitals is they're sensing the shift in the political, the body politic, if you will, about Russia and Ukraine, and the fact that they're willing to make sacrifice to do something about it. So the EU led the charge with basically going after Putin and Lavrov, and then we jumped in right afterwards. I think we were ready to jump in, but we just couldn't get European consensus on that. And based on what I'm hearing now, there's a very good chance that sanctions may be imposed with SWIFT, taking Russia out of SWIFT, and that may be the next thing we see.
Yeah, no, that's right. There were some developments.
I like not being lied to by my government for a lot of years, and then starting all this shit. It needs to happen so we can restart.
As well imposed yesterday by the Biden administration that didn't touch the energy sector in Russia. Do you think that will change going forward?
I think all eyes need to be on Germany on that one, because they're impacted more than anybody else, and we want to keep the alliance together, if you will. NATO is speaking with one voice, and I think what it is we're getting consensus on as many things as we can. That's one. Dealing with energy, they've got a very basic reason why they can't, because they need the natural gas, and honestly they need the oil too, but they need the natural gas and some other things. So they just don't want to cut them off cold. But you know, what we heard today was the willingness to make sacrifices. That was coming out of the EU, and that there seemed to be a consensus voice that was emerging that I hadn't heard before.
Well, they made it our problem when they put sanctions on everybody, or on Russia.
Towards that, I don't know if the Russians want to. I mean, I don't know if the Germans want to turn off the Russian.
I've been telling people just to stack them on food because this is going to hurt us.
On the other hand,
it's going to hurt all the way around.
I mean, literally in Germany, political opinion will sway which way the leadership goes on this.
Yeah, of course. Let's talk about what happened at this NATO summit today as well. We heard from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg essentially announced that it will be moved around to shore up some of the members on the eastern flank, the alliance that are very, very close to the Ukrainian fighting. What did you make of that, and what does that entail? What will that look like, do you think?
Well, this is interesting. You know, of course, they mobilize or activate the response
Weak men
force,
create
the
hard
rapid
times,
response
hard
force.
times
It's actually
create
the NATO
strong
response force.
men.
But it's this quick reaction force.
Great
It's about
good
40,000
times, good
troops,
times
a lot
create
of special
weak
equipment
men.
and other things that they use to go in there as kind of a.
And we're in hard times right now.
A tiger team, if you will, to reinforce.
We all gonna have to get tough here soon. Or just start getting tough. Or tough. Y'all probably are tough, but get more tough. Oh yeah, and our Trucker Freedom Convoy that's going to go truckers. Freedom! No mandate. Your body, your choice.
That border area to strengthen up that border of Ukraine with the Baltic states, or Ukraine with, I'm sorry, Poland and Romania.
Down to the NWO. Down with the elite.
They share with,
Drain the
Russia
swamp.
to make sure Russia doesn't miscalculate. You know, the big
Let's
fear
go,
is that
Brendan.
what happened Monday was when Putin described why Ukraine wasn't a real nation in his mind. That same logic, of course,
The reason why they're going into Ukraine is because Ukraine's been the independent nations that Putin recognized. Ukraine's been bombing the heck out of them. So basically everybody in Ukraine are they like Hitler because during World War II, Hitler came there and liberated them from Stalin. And so everybody there is pro-Nazi and stuff like that. The news and NATO and everybody won't tell you that, but that is coming from a person who I met from there. He's actually from Estonia, and he's full-on Nazi. Heil Hitler and all the armed stuff and everything, and down to the different races and stuff like that. I have a buddy who was talking to me, he let him know he was Jewish. The guy said, well, I'd love to have lunch with you, but you have to sit on the other side of the freaking restaurant away from me. Like, how messed up is that? Sorry, everybody, I'm ranting while you guys need to be listening, but, or not need to be listening, but want to probably listen to this. But yeah, I'm ranting. My bad.
Something to the effect of we're continuing to provide ways for them to defend themselves.
So when Putin said they're full of Nazis, he was correct. That is correct.
On that to be more specific, to give more details. He wouldn't. What did you make of that?
Well,
let's just say we've been fed lies through propaganda
this is the bump, obviously. And so you have to, I have to come past it to get on. And my IFB is here.
Go listen to InfoWars. Go listen to Alex Jones. Go to bandvideo.com.
Okay, never mind. Scratch what I said.
And whatever we're doing, however we're moving, weapons, equipment, whatever it is, to support the Ukrainians, we want to keep that as clandestine as possible, out of fear that it'll be targeted, out of fear it'll be interrupted, or out of fear that it'll be intercepted and maybe those weapons go the wrong direction. So whatever we're doing, we want to keep that fairly big. But I think the thing we can take from that, particularly when you see the amount of money that they just asked for, they're passing, that's going to go to this effort, you're seeing a very substantial effort go to bolster up the Ukrainian resistance to the Russians. There's nothing to indicate that the Ukrainian resistance is just going to collapse overnight. There's some thought to that, but
I'm going to also say you got to look at the the opposing lines right now. So basically, Putin's basically saying, right?
That says they're going to be there for
he's
a
got
while,
Ukraine.
and I think we're looking at this for
that's just my perspective. Okay, that's how I'm calling it.
When it comes to
but
building
the other lines are NATO's lines, and they're right in front of where Putin's pushing through. So
we kind of wrote the book on that way back when.
Things could escalate very
quickly. That was World War II and pre-World War II. That was the sort of stuff that we were really good at. That's the sort of stuff with the OSS in World War II that became the CIA. And we have skills. We don't always use them, and sometimes we use them very poorly, and it's very frustrating. But we do have those abilities, and I have to look at this one. This really does remind me, in many ways, of World War II. There are just so many parallels, and supporting the resistance really reminds me of the Special Operations Executive in Britain, the Jedburgh teams that we put in to deal with the Nazis in Germany. There's just a lot of parallels, and I'm not saying we're going to put U.S. personnel or anything like that in there, but the ability to resist. But it's interesting, I was talking to someone who was writing an article today, and we were talking about resistance forces and special mission units and things along that line. And what it really comes down to is, do we need to put U.S. special operations personnel in there? Not really. They have the Ukrainians
people
have
on the street who I spoke to today were speaking about the fact that they're not afraid, that they're prepared to fight, that they were arming themselves, that many of them were in territorial defense groups waiting for their commanders to contact them. The government, for its part, has started issuing weapons and instructing people how to make Molotov cocktails. And at the same time as that, we know that the Ukrainian army has been bringing in extra troops into the capital to ensure the defense of the capital. The intention clearly being that if the Russians do surround Kyiv and then try to enter Kyiv, there will be really stiff opposition if they try to get into Kyiv itself. And judging by what we've seen elsewhere in the country over the last 48 hours, fighting, for instance, Kharkiv, Chernobyl in the north, and also in the Donbass and around Mariupol, there's no doubt that the Russians are finding that the opposition from the Ukrainian armed forces is tougher than they seem to have expected. They're not making very much progress. They haven't captured any of the major cities yet, one or two small towns, but no major cities. And they're having to reroute their attack, it seems, towards Kyiv. So it's not all going well for the Russians at the moment. They have an advantage. Their army is larger, better equipped, and they have the advantage of air power over Ukraine as well. But at the moment, the Ukrainians are putting up pretty stiff resistance.
Refugee agencies are saying up to 5 million Ukrainians could end up leaving the country because of the conflict. According to the UN, already 50,000 have left for neighboring countries like Poland. Independent journalist Magdalena Chudovnik spoke to France 24 from a train station near the border with Ukraine, where she spoke with families that were forced to uproot their lives.
I'm here in Przemyśl at the train station, which is also a border for those who arrived from Ukraine to Poland. And today we have been meeting Ukrainians that were arriving by trains. Most of them, of course, mothers of kids, some older people as well. The fathers, brothers, the older men between 18 and 16 years old, they have to stay in Ukraine due to the martial law and mobilization that was imposed in Ukraine. We've been hearing very tragic stories of separated families that had to leave their relatives behind just to seek safety and refuge in Poland. Some of them will stay in Poland as they have already relatives here. Some of them will continue to the other European countries, Italy, Germany, among those mentioned by them. Poland had to prepare very fast for welcoming those people. So we are right now at what is called the reception point for the Ukrainians coming, and they are just simple bags, so you can, as you mentioned, see behind me, ready for them. But also next to this reception point, we also have another locations in the city that, in a similar conditions, welcome those people who need to stay. Some of them stay overnight because they wait for the transport that will pick them up tomorrow. There are a lot of volunteers from Poland, Polish people, for free coming here and just picking those Ukrainians and driving them wherever they need to go. There are also buses and trains. They come here, they receive all the information necessary, but some of them, they still need to stay away for the transport. Like the lady I just spoke with a little kid that had to wait for her grandma to pick her up and then go to Italy directly.
The invasion has wide-ranging ramifications, including on the world of sport. The International Olympic Committee says sports federations should either move or cancel events currently planned in Russia or Belarus. So far, Russia has lost the Champions League final and the Formula One Russian Grand Prix, among others. Emerald Maxwell has the details.
It's one of the many repercussions of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. UEFA has stripped St. Petersburg of the Champions League final. Instead, European football's most prestigious game will be held in Paris on May 28th. After condemning the ongoing military invasion, the football body said it will fully support efforts to ensure the provision of rescue for football players and their families in Ukraine who face dire human suffering, destruction and displacement. But UEFA is still sponsored by Russian gas giant Gazprom, which is majority owned by the Kremlin. It's a sponsor that's causing embarrassment to the football world in general. German club Schalke tweeted that it was removing Gazprom's logo from its shirts, without expanding on what that meant for the future of its partnership, which brings in up to 10 million euros per season. Manchester United, meanwhile, have withdrawn Russian airline Aeroflot's sponsorship rights. But football isn't the only sport to be impacted by the conflict. Formula One removed the Russian Grand Prix from its schedule after several drivers said they would boycott the September event.
I think it's horrible to see what is happening. I should not go, I will not go. I think it's wrong to race in the country.
In basketball, upcoming EuroLeague games involving Russian teams have been postponed. 5 World Cup skiing events that were scheduled in Russia this weekend and next month have also been cancelled or moved.
That's it for now, but before we leave, let's take a look at some of these live pictures from Kyiv and Maidan Square. You can see the sun going up on the Ukrainian capital, and you can also hear some more frequent gunfire and artillery fire in the Ukrainian capital. We'll be following this situation very closely here on France 24.
To fight. That's the big thing. I think that's what differentiates him so much from the Russians, is the will to fight. Yeah. The other thing is, heaven forbid, he turns out to be correct, and they get in there. The fact that he stayed there
that is
and
6:30
that risk with his people will continue to inspire that resistance long after he's gone. Heaven forbid that happens, but I have to tell you, it's very impressive.
It's very inspiring. You were referencing Ashraf Ghani, the then Afghan leader who essentially fled before the Taliban came in and took over Kabul. I wanted your opinion too, because this is an alarmist, maybe defeatist scenario. But in your view, if Zelensky is captured, will Russian forces kill him?
I don't know what they'll do. I think they're gonna make a decision based on what they think will get them the most value out of him. If parading him out there, holding a trial for war, made-up war crimes or whatever, if they feel that's what's going to help them, then they'll do that. On the other hand, they may feel that killing him will be the most expedient way to deal with it. I have to say that I think whatever they do, it's going to backfire. Whatever they do. I mean, if you take it from the old Soviet playbook, what they want to do is they want to capture him, and then they normally torture him to the point where he basically says, I did all these horrible things, I committed war crimes and stuff like that. That tends to be their, usually you get some sort of coerced confession out of them, and then often they'll take him out and shoot him or something like that. But I don't know. I honestly don't know, and I don't know if they're going to be able to take him alive. I have a feeling that whatever happens could get very kinetic, and I don't know if they would have the opportunity to take him alive.
Now, also, let's get to the fighting at hand, because we have been seeing very promising reports about how the Ukrainian military is doing. They have made some gains, but I want to kind of sift through the fog of war, because that could be misleading. A lot of people have wishful thinking on this part. We want the Ukrainians to be successful, but I just want to cut through it, because is that what's happening, or is that what we want to be happening?
Andrew, what we're seeing is a general assessment that the Russians are not moving as fast as they want to move. They have not gone in there as they certainly would have hoped and rolled right in the middle of the major cities and taken the major cities and installed a puppet government. Coming out that these conscripts the morale is really bad, and they're playing on that. And it is that basic
Possible
psychology.
shelling
You're doing
starting
this
in
move to
20
contact,
minutes.
and you
Possible
start
shelling
seeing,
starting.
a certain percentage of your motorized rifle company going up in flames, and you're not quite sure why you were there.